Welcome, friends, to the Someone Gets Me podcast. I am your host, Dianne A, and I am so delighted that you're here. This podcast was created because I believe there is a visionary leader inside each one of us who is waiting to be seen. In each episode of Someone Gets Me, you will hear useful tips from successful visionaries who will share their stories about how being seen has allowed them to take their vision out into the world with action. 5 prominent neurodivergent superpowers. Friends, it's Dianne here at Someone Gets Me, and today we're talking about the superpowers of neurodivergent people. Now, many of you who know me and been following me for quite a while know that my specialty is working with neurodivergent, intensely sensitive adults and families in some cases. And I've been doing this work a long time, and so I've kind of gathered some commonalities for the different neurodivergent people that I work with, because I work with people in the corporate setting, in the entrepreneur setting, musicians, artists, all different walks of life, all different talents and skill sets. The common denominator is that everybody I work with is motivated to learn and grow, and they're neurodivergent in some manner. And so there's some commonalities. As different and varied and beautiful as everyone is, there are common things. And so I'm going to give you 5 of them. So if you're saying yes to a few of these or all of them, then you win the ticket of having the most extraordinary, amazing, unique way of doing the world. Sometimes it's challenging because we live in a world that is meant for average, that is not necessarily understanding or really even care about who we are and the way we live. So sometimes we need to find our own community in order to really build on our neurodivergence and realize that there's nothing wrong with us. That the truth is you are built with an extraordinary, unique wiring and unique way of living that can never be repeated again. That's the truth. So let's look at these superpowers. Let me know in the comments when this video is over, how many of them do you do, right? How many of them are you? The first one is that you solve problems in a very unexpected way. That especially in work and family situations, you will be the person who will find the solution by not taking the main road. It's almost like if I was walking across a campus. In fact, I was at the University of Florida not long ago, and we're walking on the main brick walkway. It's beautiful there on that campus. And then there was a little side path that you could tell the grass was trampled by people, probably mostly students, cutting over to another building where there was not already a paved path. So there was the main path that was paved that eventually leaded around. And then there was this little shortcut path that was a footpath cut through the grass. So I think that footpath cut through the grass was probably the neurodivergent people going, there is a more effective way to get to this place, do this thing, than the way it was laid out. Neurodivergent people follow a way of doing things. It's not typical. So I know in many of my career settings before I started only working with neurodivergent people, people would look at me, how did you figure that out? Or why did you think of it that way? And neurotypical people or people unaware would ask questions that to me seemed off-putting in a way or not relevant, because of course this is how I would solve it. So a lot of the young people that I work with who are solving problems differently or addressing things in a unique path, kind of like taking the maze of solving life and drilling a hole through it and doing something totally different, but yet still getting to the answer of what their vision and mission is. To me, that's remarkable, beautiful, and wonderful. I don't see it as a problem. It's unique and wonderful. So do you take unexpected paths to get to your destination, whether it's a problem you're solving or something you're trying to create? Or do you do the typical regular way? That's the first one. The second one is that you love to dive deep. Now, every single person I work with, including me, we love to dive deep. In fact, I have to be careful sometimes when I mention an idea to one of my people, because while we're still on Zoom, they will already be Googling and already researching and already asking ChatGPT and already looking for resources around the idea or concept that I just said to them before we even get the conversation done. And some of them will have an entire expose ready for me on our next meeting. Tell me all about it. And sometimes I get text messages or phone calls or emails from people with more information about the thing, whatever the topic is, whether it's a certain nutrition thing, whether it's a certain behavior, whether it's a certain way to interact or relate. Neurodivergent people think deep diving is the norm. That's how we do just about everything. So when one of my people says, well, Diane, I researched it, I just chuckle and go, of course you did. Of course you researched it. If you didn't, I would be surprised. That's how we roll. I research just about everything myself. And I don't always go as deep as some of my people do, but they go deep. All neurodivergent people, we're going to dive deeper than the norm. Now, sometimes that kind of gets in our way because we spend a lot of time diving into things that may or may not matter. But the way I look at it is this: even if I deep dive into something that isn't necessarily going to be salient in this moment with whatever the immediate issue is, that information that I'm gathering will serve either myself later or one of my clients at some point, or I'll be able to share it with a friend. There's been countless numbers of times in my whole career, which has spanned over 45 years now, where I have learned something or maybe even asked an existential question and researched in all kinds of ways through video and text and online and different things. And within a week or two after me like getting this inspiration and deep diving into a topic, almost 100% of the time, within a week, a client or another friend of mine or somebody asks me about that very topic. And so I have the information because I'm willing to deep dive every time I get an inspiration. And so I spend a lot of time researching and learning. And I think that's what a neurodivergent leader does: always learning, always working toward their own growth and expansion. In fact, many of my clients have said to me over the years how it's remarkable how I keep growing and learning along with everybody. And I believe that that's essential if I'm going to be a leader. And so that is what I do, and that's what I love to do. So the third thing is we are the best at noting a pattern. Pattern mastery, I call it. We can see a pattern that most people can't. We notice patterns in behavior, in emotion, in context, in words, in conversation, in energy. We notice them. In fact, sometimes in some of the gifted circles, one of my colleagues, she's really amazing, and she'll say, well, one time is a pattern for us. And it's kind of close to that, right? We can already start putting the data points together. We can already see how it's going to line up, because that is part of our neurodivergence. We are wired for pattern recognition. We're wired to dive deep into things and see how things connect. That's how we roll. So of course, that's how it's going to happen. And so we have to understand that we notice patterns many other people don't. In fact, I've noticed patterns before and said something about it. And I had one friend of mine pat me on the head because he's much taller than I am and say, oh, you think so differently, dear. The truth is, yes, I do. I'm neurodivergent. I notice patterns. Driving down the road, I notice patterns. Walking through Disney, I notice patterns. I notice patterns all the time. And that is how neurodivergent people operate. So if you're not neurodivergent, you're neurotypical, or maybe you're neurodivergent and you're just now figuring it out based on these things because you so far have said yes, yes, and yes. You notice the pattern. Yes, it's important to understand that. All of my clients recognize patterns. In fact, some of them recognize patterns that they don't even know they're recognizing. They don't even see it yet, because some people come and start working with me before they really realize the extent of their giftedness or the extent of their overexcitabilities or sensitivities, or the fact that they're even neurodivergent. Some people start working with me only thinking that, well, I'm different than everyone else and I've tried to fit in and that's not working. Will you help me be me? Or something similar, right? So not everybody sees it right away. So that's the third thing. The fourth thing is, I call it brilliant hyperfocus. Yes, brilliant hyperfocus, because we can focus on something and lose track of time, completely dive in, and we're focused. very clearly, like I'm working on my website for my new retreat, or I'm doing videos for the podcast, or I'm writing a book. I can focus to the point to that other things feel excluded, like drinking enough water or eating or doing other things I should be doing, right? Because I'm focused on what I'm doing. Now, sometimes that gets in the way, right? Because I have some people that I'm working with and their teenage kids. I love to hyper focus on things, and trying to break that trance sometimes takes skill and time and talent and understanding. But we can focus on anything if, as long as it's interesting, as long as it's new and compelling. It's difficult to focus on something in a hyper focused type of manner if we're bored or we don't want to. So that's one of the big ways you can tell a neurodivergent person when they're really in it, they're in it. And if it's boring or we don't want to, and or it's something that we see as inconsequential, you won't see these things show up as much because we save it for the interesting, novel, creative, challenging content, things about life, right? But I can focus really well. And a lot of my clients can focus really well, especially if it's interesting. And how many of you have said 4 yeses so far, right? Yeah. And the fifth thing is, and this is a very important one, and I have this very strongly personally, and that is a way to sense what's unspoken. I call it kind of like a pregnant silence, in that way where if I'm speaking to somebody, especially a friend, and they're holding back a feeling or saying something, or what they're saying is not congruent, it doesn't match with the energy or the feeling they're having, I feel it and I know it. And it takes over for me sometimes my experience in the conversation. I have somebody in my life who calls me a very close friend, and I think we are close friends. However, I can tell with very slight nuance when she's not saying what she wants to say. And I can also say that when she understand and feel and sense into when she says something that isn't quite what she really means. And when I ask about it, I'll say, really, is that it? Or is there more or something? Then I will always get, oh yeah, that's all. And then the subject will get changed. And so whether that person is unaware and they don't have that connection with their own being, or whether they're intentionally not disclosing something, that's on them. That's not for me. But I can tell you very clearly when things don't line up energetically. So it really helps when I'm working with my clients, because if something is off with them because of people I'm working with, their motive is to keep growing and changing and transforming. So most of the people I work with are open. They're open to me saying, well, I don't know if that kind of lines up. Let me give you kind of the read I'm getting. Let me let you know kind of what I'm sensing here that's unspoken. And let's see how we can bring these things together and get an alignment or a coherence. But neurodivergent people are great at feeling tension or whatever the underlying energy is of something. If there's an undisclosed motive and it's in the energy field, which it usually is, a neurodivergent person will feel it. Sometimes neurodivergent people will respond to the undisclosed or the energy rather than the words. So there's a lot of people who want to know, well, how do you know these things? It's weird, or they deny it, right? Because they're not aware themselves. Sadly, so many people are not aware of their own essence and their own being and their own experience. And we as neurodivergent people often have as much or more awareness about a situation and a feeling than other people. So that ability to sense things is really powerful. It helps us make good decisions. It helps us with our boundaries. I know if I have people in my life and consistently I feel things not line up or not match, I know that my little warning flags are up for a while. I pay real close attention to that. That doesn't mean they're not my friend anymore. It doesn't mean they're not my colleague or somebody I work with. It means that I'm paying attention, because usually that person is either unaware or there's an undisclosed motive that's intentional. And I get to play sit and see and sort out what it really is. But it's okay not to walk into that kind of situation unknowingly, right? So those are the 5 really big things that I see all the time. All of us who are neurodivergent, take unexpected paths in our lives to follow or to problem solve, to get to where we're going. We're not going to take the typical road. It almost never happens that way. We deep dive into content and subjects and things that are important to us, things that matter, things that have our attention. We will recognize a pattern faster than most people, and we can see how things are hooked together, that the obvious pattern and the underneath pattern. We're good at that. So if you want to know what the pattern is in something, ask a neurodivergent person. They'll be able to tell you just like that. And then we also are really good at hyper-focusing when we need to. And that's where genius and brilliance comes out. That's where some of my books have come out, where I really focus on sharing some ideas and the books come through, or the blog comes through, or the video comes through because of that hyper-focus. And of course, we're really good at sensing the unspoken, sensing the things that aren't necessarily obvious. Because as a neurodivergent person, we are wired differently than typical. So when people say, I want to be normal, well, normal is not something that we are inherently, right? And so I always tell people, what's your normal? Like, my normal is different than a normal of someone else. And so we pay attention to how those things work, and we shift our understanding of the world to have it work for us. And as a leader in the neurodivergent community, it's my responsibility, I really believe, to help everyone who is in this position and people who are our loved ones understand and begin to see that there is so much beauty and power and brilliance in being a neurodivergent person. That yes, there are challenges and obstacles, and most of the society doesn't understand us. That's all true. Yes, it can feel really lonely too. That's all true. And there's some beauty. So when we put everything together and we allow ourselves to navigate through our own lives, taking what our amazing strengths are, bringing them to the table to help us navigate the challenges, we end up having a much more rich and deep life experience. And that's the goal for myself and other people. Everybody I work with is transforming in those ways. That's why I do what I do. And that's why I'm doing this episode, because so many people miss these things. I have neurodivergent people who do all of these, and they thought everyone did all of those. And it's not true. Everyone doesn't do it. So those of you who think that people who don't deep dive are being lazy, that's not the case. Not necessarily. Those of you who can't understand how people can see patterns like you, it's not because they're lazy or they're unobservant. Not everybody has the skill and ability that you have. So I look at this from a behavioral way and a practical way, and looking at how does it show up in your life. For me, my neurodivergence shows up as the ability to do all of these things, and also to have very deep, extreme empathy, to be able to put myself with my person I'm working with the group I'm dealing with, so that we can together move in a way that serves us. So that is the magic of being neurodivergent. We are wired to see and experience the world differently. Sometimes it's really hard. And sometimes it's magical and amazing. And sometimes it's just average. It's all those things. So I wish for you that you honor who you are, and you honor your intensities, you honor your sensitivities, you honor your difference and your variance. And you allow yourself to show up in the most authentic, beautiful way that you can. Stand in your sovereignty and know that you are beautiful, lovable, and fully capable, just exactly as you are. I hope this has served you. As always, you can make a get to know you call with me. I'm happy to talk about this more, or to work with you in any fashion that will serve you. And in the meantime, put your face to the sun so the shadows fall behind you, because you're a rock star. You're here on purpose with a mighty purpose. So go out there and let the light shine, and let your soul come alive. Till the next episode of Someone Gets Me, this is Dianne saying, be well.
Thank you for listening. I trust you gained some valuable inspiration and information. Please join me and other visionaries in the Someone Gets Me Facebook group. Or for more information on my services and additional episodes, visit someonegetsme.com. Again, thanks for listening.